Okay, seventh time is a charm. Yes, that is how many times I tried to comment over this video, but when you have 4 kids, you're not allowed to do things like this. There is no silence. So, if you hear any screaming or crying or kids coming in, this is just a forewarning because that's what happens. Kitchen remodel. I don't know if you'd call it a remodel or a dress up or what, but I changed it quite a bit. It needed done. When I moved in, we had to throw a quick coat of paint over these cabinets because we didn't really have the time to remodel it right away or the money because we had a baby on the way and we only had 10 days to move in here. I've told the story before in some of my other videos where I'm remodeling. So I started by taking the doors off and I decided not to rebuild the entire cabinets. These cabinets are really sturdy and they're nice cabinets. They're not bad. They're just ugly. So I decided to keep the actual cabinets and just redo the doors and the faces and the sides. I reused the hardware and everything. So it's definitely a budget build here. Now these are just furring strips. If you've seen my other videos, you know that this is like the 1000th. I've stained hundreds, if not thousands, of these things. It's never ending. But I decided to use them for the overhead and the cabinet faces and some trim work, which, as you can see, it dresses them up pretty nice. And to redo all of my cabinets in my entire kitchen for $25, I'm not going to complain about it. Now, they might not be oak or walnut or maple, but they're pine, and that's good enough for me. So, the start of the doors here, this is all more staining, and you get so immune to stain after a while that you stop even smelling it, which probably isn't a good thing. But after staining thousands and thousands of furring strips, I don't know. If you don't like the stain and you probably shouldn't do a project like this because you're going to be doing a lot of it. Now, all the doors were the same length. They weren't all the same width, but they were the same length. So it was a lot of repetitiveness of just cutting the same, over and over again. But once I had them all cut out, I was able to joint them to the correct width. Now, of course, depending on, the width of the cabinet door is depending on how many times you run it through the joiner. And as you can see, I run each one through countless times. So this is what you come up with, essentially. These are very simple doors. It's as simple as it gets and as cheap as it gets, but they're sturdy and they're nice looking. I think so I'm glad I went with this idea. It dawned on me ultimately when I did the when I was making the wall sconces for my living room, and I made those, you can see it's the exact same thing. I had them leaning up against my cabinet doors in the kitchen when I was building them, and I thought, hell, why don't I just make the cabinet doors like this? It was almost the same size as a cabinet door, and I thought, hey, this would look all right, better than what's there, right? So I decided to go with it, and I'm glad I did. I made them a little, I made them the correct size, but I didn't take into account that they would shrink, from being in the heat, because I built them out in an 11-degree garage. So they shrunk a little bit, which if I could do it all over again, I would take that into account, but I'm not going to lose sleep over it because they still function perfectly, but there's just a little bit more of a gap than I wanted. But as you can see, they look fine. $25 right there. So anyway, I start running my range hood. I'd never had a range hood. Well, I had one. I just never had a range hood in this kitchen. Other places, yes, but I don't do too much cooking, and the wife, she does, but we don't really do anything crazy, so I didn't need some crazy exhaust going outside. I just wanted to filter it out a little bit if we had some steam going. So all this was just kind of done as I went. There was no plan. Okay, I know a lot of people find that hard to believe, and they say, I fly by the seat of my pants, whatever. But to me, it's like drawing a picture. You just add things as you go. It's free flow. There's no. When I tend to plan these projects, to the T, you end up getting stressed out, and things don't work out the way you want. You have to take an account for problems, and you run into obstacles. So trying to plan everything perfectly can just be aggravating. The base cabinets, I decided to make large single cabinets doors rather than make 2 cabinet doors per cabinet. And I found these hinges. They're spring-loaded hinges. I found them for $8 at a surplus store. I lucked out. And they shut all by themselves down there, which is cool. The top ones do not. Started tearing the trim out. Obviously, the trim needed done in the kitchen. Everything gets done eventually. I skipped ahead a bit. Don't pay no attention to that hole in the wall. So, okay, here we go. This was a really, this was the biggest part of it. I really wanted this to be done. I always wanted a breakfast bar in there. This wall was just there. I didn't realize when I started, until I started digging into it, that I was standing in an addition. I had no idea, but I was digging. I was cutting through the outside of the house, or what once was the outside of the house. So it was a very large unknown. Now, I should say, when you're doing anything like this, you should shut the power off. You don't want to get electrocuted. You don't know if you're going to be hacking into any wires or anything like that. And if you've never done this before, you should probably, get an electrician involved or someone that knows what they're doing. Unless you're me and you just wing everything and it works out. So I knew where the wires were prior. I drilled holes to make sure that I wasn't cutting in anything, so hence why the lights are still on. This isn't the first time I've done this, but if it is your first time, be aware of what you're doing, because you can die. Or you could burn your house down and kill other people, so make sure that the power is off. Coming through this side wasn't horrible. This drywall was so thin that it was like going through paper. It was crazy. I'm kind of glad I took it out. But then you go through the layer of plaster. There's so many layers of just junk. And then after you get through the layers of junk, I couldn't have been in a worse situation with wires. But there it is. Amazing, right? So I had to reroute everything. I managed to do it. It took an entire day to reroute the wires and cut out the hole, and that was probably the most tedious process of the whole project. But it worked out that there were wires in there, because I didn't have to run any new wires, and I could run my lighting, and it worked out perfectly. Now, for any of you that are familiar with a Craig jig, it's a must if you're doing a project like this with countertops or cabinets or furniture or anything. I wouldn't do a project without it. The days of joinery and doing these special joints, I'm not saying they're over. They're very, very much here and alive, but this is the easiest, and it's a very strong joint. It's one of the strongest joints that you can have, and it's it's self-explanatory. You don't have to go through much work to make these joints. But it never hurts to use wood glue. You still use wood glue in your joints. A lot of sanding involved. The sanding never ends, but that's all part of it. And when you're doing countertops, especially for a kitchen, not a workbench, and there's water involved, you don't want to have any cracks or grooves, because water will get down in there and you wasted your time. So you want to get it as smooth as possible, and you want to put a lot of coats of polyurethane on. I think I put about 5 on, which a lot of people would say that's overkill, but I mean, we're talking about kitchen counters and kids, so I'm not going to take the risk. I really didn't like this design I did. I wasn't crazy about it. I just kind of whipped it up and made that template, but it's growing on me. I mean, I guess I can live with it. You'll see what I mean. Yeah, I mean, I guess I could have just did it square, but it's one of those things where it's not the end of the world. You should paint before you do trim, obviously, so this is the dining room side trim, hence the white. And there is from the outside looking in. That was the easiest place to put the toggle switch, and I think it works there. Wanted to keep it out of reach of little kids as well. Like I said, 5 or 6 coats, I don't even remember. So getting into the trim, I got these brackets on Amazon for real cheap. I think 4 came in a pack for $16 or something. And I didn't incorporate them into the build for structural purposes. It's literally just for decoration. I mean, I'm sure they do add some integrity to the structure, but it's really not, they're really just there for looks. So I started getting somewhere with it. It was starting to come together, but and the refrigerator being in that hole saved all the spot, all kinds of space, and I had to run electricity for that as well, because you have to run a refrigerator on its own circuit. Now here, this door, I didn't know what to do with it. First, I slapped some gray on it because I didn't know if I'd just paint it gray, and I wanted to see what it looked like. Ultimately, I decided to do it as if it was a cabinet door. I did the other cabinet doors like that, so I figured I'd just make the cellar door a big cabinet door. And I figured if I hated it, I could just reuse the wood and move on and get a new door. But I ended up liking it. It's alright. And it still functions perfectly. There's nothing wrong with it. Alright, so I never hooked up a dishwasher before. This is a first. I never even owned one in any of the houses that I lived in, except for when I was a kid, and I was too young to use it, so I didn't know what I was doing. Taking the countertops off these cabinets were kind of a pain as well, because these cabinets were homemade by the previous owners, and they weren't built to disassemble. they were kind of just built to always be there. But I had to cut the cabinet down because I had a double sink, a very shallow 6-inch double sink, that adding the dishwasher would have moved everything down in a way where the basement door wouldn't be able to open. So I had to find a single sink and shorten the cabinet and move everything down to fit the 24-inch dishwasher in. Now this might seem like it was a huge headache, but really it wasn't. It's just a matter of cutting the cabinet down, and I had to wire the dishwasher up. It was given to me from a friend for free. It was on his porch for a year. Decided to, make use of it because it worked. But the wire was cut, so I had to rewire everything, and that had to be run on its own circuit as well, in the basement. So a lot of wiring down to the basement that I don't show. I don't show too much of the electrical aspect other than this. I had to wire a new plug, and I guess it goes without saying, when you're wiring anything up or doing anything, you should probably, get an electrician involved, or unless you're me and you just want to learn how to do it yourself. But I would have all the power shut off, and I would try to know what I'm doing. Do your research. There's so much information out there. Anyone can do this stuff, but don't risk getting electrocuted. So the countertops, the most serious part of the whole entire build, because let's face it, they're going to get used the most. There's a lot of space they're covering, and it's just, the most work. I had to spend about 8 hours out there sanding and prepping and making sure that there's no crevices, and because like I said before, you don't want water to settle in between the cracks, or you don't want any cracks. Everything should be sealed and jointed, and or else you're just wasting a lot of time. Now I figure we'll see how this goes, because if I do, if they end up not working out, or if something didn't work out, I'm really only wasting about $25 in lumber, and I can just replace it. But I don't believe in wasting time and money for no reason when I can just do it right the first time. So I really tried to do a good job on these and make sure that they were really sealed. And yes, I know that the sanding is boring to watch, but it's all part of it, and this is extremely speeded up, but it was about 9 hours of sanding out there in 10-degree weather, but it was worth it. And those of you that don't have a joiner, you can use, there's hand planers, there's handheld joiners, electric joiners as well. So there's other alternatives. You don't have to have all these machines that I do or anything. I mean, I'm still using like a drill from 12 years ago, my old Black & Deckers. So I'm not up to date with all these tools or anything. Everything I'm using is like 50 years old plus. I don't have a professional wood shop, so I'm just pretty much a garage weekend warrior. So there you have it. I wasn't exactly sure how I wanted to finish the tops, but I wasn't sure what color or if I wanted to go darker or lighter, but here is my $10 deep sink. It never hurts to go used, ladies and gentlemen. If you can find a deal on it, if you're just getting a stainless steel sink, go to your local demolition yard or something. They had like 20 of these there for $10 each, and there wasn't a scratch on it. It's fine. I can't see spending the $300 that it really costs buying it brand new. So it's just, it's just a no-brainer. Now, staining, I just ended up going walnut, the same color as the cabinets. I figured I didn't want to take a chance of staining it a color that I wasn't sure about and end up hating it, because once it's stained, it is stained. So I went with what I knew was fine, and that was that. Alright, so there was some plumbing involved, obviously, as well. Having a deep sink, going from a 6-inch double sink to a single deep sink, obviously everything had to be shortened, the plumbing had to be completely different, and then adding the dishwasher. This is the first time doing it, and I have to say it was really self-explanatory. It wasn't hard at all. Anybody could do this. I'm not a plumber or an electrician by any means. I just kind of dabble into things, and if it works, it works. Trial and error. So there you have it. It's ready to roll. And I knew that the power worked and everything, but I couldn't test the dishwasher itself until I hooked the faucet up, and the faucet wasn't in yet. So I had to kind of wait on that and just really hope and pray that all the seals were tight and everything was waterproof. Finally finished the door. Those magnets work really well too, by the way. This is all unusable scrap wood that, not scrap wood, but from the demo that I had, and I couldn't reuse any of it, so it got burnt. Had a little help with the floor there. It actually, it was great. They got it done in 10 minutes. So now, with that being said, you had the sticky stuff left behind, so we had to leave a little path to stand on while we laid the new floor, and which was very easy. Vinyl flooring, by the way. Kitchen here, folks. Had to put the toe kick on. All right, now I use the stick and stay, which is for steps, for padding on steps, or grip that goes on steps. And it takes about 24 hours to dry, but I figured I'd dress up this. It's flexible a little bit, so it's like almost like rubbery. So I figured it'd be the perfect thing to stick the face of the cabinet or on the dishwasher. And it's great. It's not going anywhere. So here's the build with my prep table build. I decided to build a prep table for in the kitchen because when I moved the refrigerator and the deep freezer, I had that whole wall and we needed more countertop space. So I figured I'd build a prep table and a coffee station because I always wanted a coffee station. So I figured if I'm going to be building this custom, like, why not do it all now instead of someday wishing I did. And I do this like an assembly line, guys. Like, everything is done like a factory. Like, I do all my pre-drilling, all my cutting first, then all my pre-drilling, then all my sanding, and then all my assembly all at once. Rather than building one table and then going back and repeating all those processes over again, it's easier just to do it all at once. After building multiple things and being very limited on time, you tend to learn how to work a little smarter than harder. But it was a process. I mean, I've wasted many, probably months of my life, added up all together in wasting time doing projects dumb ways. Everything's a learning experience. And yes, I know I should be wearing safety goggles and respirators and everything like that, but I'm not the smartest person when it comes to this. I'm rushing in and out of the house about 1,000 times a day, making cuts, and I don't carry a respirator around with me everywhere I go, and my safety glasses fall off, and but I would advise you to wear them, I guess. So putting these together is very simple as well. Now I give a 3/4 inch space underneath the braces so that it just makes it look like you spent a little more time on them, and you didn't just slap them together flush. Makes them look a little fancier. But these are super simple and super easy. Well, I guess super inexpensive is what I meant to say. And they're solid. They're not going anywhere. These are going to be around a lot longer than me. So for the bottoms, I had these leftover furring strips from the cabinets, and I decided to just do those for the shelving and leave some gaps. But everything takes prep work. You had to make sure that everything was sanded, because when you're in a kitchen and things need to be wiped down, you don't want your rag catching on, knots or splinters or, any unfinished wood. So you want everything to be sanded down so that you can clean up. It's very important. And if you're going to if you're going to spend the time and put the time and effort into this, and you skip a step like sanding a board, it's kind of get mad at yourself doing stuff like that. So there it is, fully stained, and the lighting's horrible in this kitchen. So as you noticed. Lots of polyurethane. And by the way, I should add that the kitchen was completely functional during all of this. I think I did say that earlier, but oh, here's my faucet that arrived. Now this faucet was a $60 faucet from Amazon. I took my chances with it. I'm so glad that I did. It's awesome. It works great. It does exactly what I want it to do. It's powerful. It's good. It rinses my dishes off, and that's all I need it for. I can pull that, the nozzle off and spray wherever I need to spray, and I'm really happy with it for $60 because I've seen the same ones, probably nicer brands, but I've seen the same ones for upwards of $400, and this one works great. And if anything does happen to it, I won't be out $400. I'll have kids yanking on it. All right, so I'm finally ready to give it a try, and the dishwasher is functional and there's no leaks, and I was a pretty happy camper that day. Heat pads. Made some heat pads with my scrap wood because, as you know, with stained countertops with polyurethane or whatever finish you use, you risk leaving white marks on it from hot pots and pans and plates. So you gotta have heat pads around, and I had some leftover cabinet door handles, and that was that. The backsplash, the stainless steel backsplash, I wasn't crazy about it. There's only so many selections you can really choose from for backsplash, and I made do with it. The shelving and the brackets, more Amazon purchases for the brackets, but yeah, the shelving is in, and here's some before footage, and it's just, it's like night and day. But as you can see, the like I said, the video, it doesn't do it justice because the lighting's horrible, the quality isn't so great. But when you walk in this room now, it's so much more open and bigger, and it feels refreshing. I hated that kitchen. It's so bad the way it was. So the big numbers, guys. To wrap this up, the entire build, the entire kitchen build, to do everything that you saw me do, came to a total of $1,065. Yes, $1,065 for the whole build. So it just goes to show you don't necessarily have to tear all your cabinets out. You don't have to get marble countertops. You don't have to, or Corian countertops or anything crazy. You can at least make your kitchen a little easier on the eyes for cheap. That's $25 Walmart paint. It's a budget build, but I can walk into this kitchen. My wife loves it. My kids love it. That bar is utilized. Every part of the kitchen is utilized, and I couldn't be happier with it. And eventually I'm going to get a new oven range and a stainless steel one to match, but that's, coming later. And there's a lot of other things that I'd like to critique. I might get different lighting for the ceiling, but thanks for watching, and I hope this helped give anyone ideas for any future builds that you might have in mind, whether it's a kitchen or a laundry room or anything. Any of these ideas can get countertops, anywhere where you need a countertop. Don't be afraid to do it. And like I said, I hope this helped. So thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next one.